Every year, thousands of women suffer in silence, victims of domestic violence during pregnancy. Shockingly, studies reveal that 1 in 6 women experience violence from their partners while expecting a child. These numbers are not just statistics, they represent real lives, families torn apart, and futures destroyed before they even begin. For some, this violence doesn't stop at emotional scars or bruises. It escalates into something far more horrifying. What happens when the one person you trust, the person who should protect you, turns into a threat? For far too many women, the nightmare becomes a terrifying reality. Imagine carrying the joy of new life, only for that joy to turn into fear, as your partner's anger becomes a constant shadow. The impact is devastating, not just for the woman involved, but for the innocent child who should be brought into a world of love, not violence. This story is just the beginning. If you're hooked, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe, because we've got more chilling true crime stories coming your way. Each case is a reminder of the darkness that can lurk behind closed doors. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you're always the first to know when we uncover another heartbreaking story. Join us as we dive deep into the stories that often go unheard, stories that reveal the harrowing consequences of domestic violence and the lives forever changed. Prepare yourself for twists and turns that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew. Sarah and Adam were a newlywed couple, filled with youthful promise and excitement for the future. Their love story was one many admired, full of shared dreams, late-night talks about their future, and plans for building a life together. Friends and family marveled at their deep connection, often commenting on how perfectly matched they seemed. Adam, a dedicated and disciplined military man, was a pillar of strength, both to his country and to his family. His commitment to his career and the structure it provided him defined much of his existence. Sarah, on the other hand, was an idealistic and nurturing woman. She found purpose in supporting Adam's dreams and envisioning a future together, one filled with children, a house filled with laughter, and a life full of love. They had dreams, as all young couples do. They talked about their children, their careers, and the places they would travel. Adam had always dreamed of having children who would carry on his legacy, especially a son who would continue the family name and eventually take his place in the military. It was the future he had always envisioned, a future with sons to teach, guide, and shape into young men who could follow in his footsteps. But nothing could have prepared them for the life-altering news that was about to arrive. It all began with a routine ultrasound, a moment Sarah had been eagerly anticipating. At 3 months pregnant, Sarah had made her way to the doctor's office for a checkup, excited to hear her baby's heartbeat and possibly get a glimpse of the child she was carrying. The excitement she felt was shared by Adam, who was, for the most part, thrilled about becoming a father. When the technician revealed that they were expecting twin girls, Sarah's joy knew no bounds. 2 daughters, what could be better than that? But for Adam, the news was a bitter pill to swallow. What should have been a moment of happiness turned into an internal battle for control, a fight over his legacy, over his masculinity, and over his future. Sarah had never anticipated such a response. She thought she would receive the same joyful reaction from Adam, but the joy quickly faded from his face, replaced by a cold, distant stare. The dream Adam had carried for so long, of raising sons who could follow in his footsteps, was slipping away. The sudden realization that his future was no longer what he had envisioned sent him spiraling. For Adam, the news of twin girls wasn't just a disappointment, it felt like a failure. This failure, combined with the pressures from his family and his rigid sense of duty, began to unravel everything he thought he understood about himself, about his family, and about his purpose in life. In many cultures, the gender of a child holds far more significance than it should. For some, the birth of a son is not merely a desire, but a societal expectation. This is especially true in traditional and patriarchal societies, where men are expected to carry on the family name, take on leadership roles, and inherit responsibilities that have been passed down through generations. Adam was raised in such an environment, a family that placed great value on having male heirs. In his household, sons were the true continuation of the family legacy. Sons were to inherit their father's values, carry on the family business or land, and in some cases, follow in their father's footsteps in the military. For Adam, the military was more than just a job. It was a calling. It was a way of life that had shaped him, taught him discipline, and reinforced his belief that sons were the rightful heirs to the family legacy. It wasn't just about carrying on the family name. It was about the idea of passing on the values, ideals, and purpose that had guided him. Sons were supposed to be the future, the next generation of men who could take over where he left off. Men who would follow the same code of honor, discipline, and service to their country. When Sarah learned she was carrying twin girls, the impact on Adam was profound. His conditioning, his family's deep-rooted traditions, and his own personal ambitions were in direct conflict with the reality of what was happening. His first reaction was one of shock, an overwhelming sense of disbelief that his future had suddenly shifted in a way he could not control. His mind raced, and the thoughts that followed were deeply troubling. In his eyes, twin girls represented not a blessing, but a loss of the future he had imagined, the legacy he had worked so hard to build. For Adam, daughters could never carry on the family name or legacy in the same way sons could. The idea of raising daughters, while inherently beautiful and meaningful, was a devastating blow to his sense of identity. His family, particularly his mother, had long emphasized the importance of male heirs. She, too, had always pushed the idea that the family legacy could only be carried on through sons. Adam had internalized this message from a young age. Every phone call, every conversation with his mother brought with it the reminder that having a son wasn't just a hope, it was an expectation, one that he could not fulfill. The weight of his family's expectations weighed heavily on him, and with each passing day, the pressure grew. Sarah and Adam's love story was built on mutual respect, admiration, and a shared sense of purpose. They met at university, where they immediately hit it off. Adam was drawn to Sarah's free-spirited nature, her optimism, and her warmth. Sarah admired Adam's discipline, his commitment to his goals, and his strong sense of duty. Together, they supported one another through their studies, late-night study sessions, and the stress of exams. Adam, ever driven, soon decided to pursue a career in the military, a choice that made perfect sense to him. He had grown up around soldiers, and it felt like the natural continuation of his legacy. Sarah, on the other hand, had always been interested in social work and education. She wanted to make a difference in the world, but her dreams didn't involve military service. Nevertheless, she respected Adam's dedication to his career and supported him in every way. They made a great team, Adam with his determination and Sarah with her nurturing spirit. Their relationship felt balanced, and they were sure that their shared vision for the future would bring them happiness and fulfillment. When Sarah found out she was pregnant, the excitement between them was palpable. They had always talked about children, and now that dream was becoming a reality. Adam was thrilled, although deep down, he had always imagined having sons. He pictured himself teaching them how to follow in his footsteps in the military, imparting his knowledge and values to the next generation. However, when Sarah mentioned the possibility of twins, Adam's optimism remained cautiously tempered. Maybe, just maybe, he thought, they would still have sons. But when the ultrasound revealed that they were expecting twin girls, the reality of their situation hit Adam like a ton of bricks. The moment the technician said, "You're having twin girls," the room seemed to close in around him. Sarah's joy was evident, but Adam's face clouded over. He felt an overwhelming sense of inadequacy and loss. His dreams, his family's legacy, and his future all seemed to be slipping through his fingers. Sarah, oblivious to the deep emotional turmoil Adam was experiencing, was overjoyed. She had always dreamed of raising daughters, children she could love, nurture, and support as they grew into strong, independent women. For Sarah, the gender of the babies didn't matter. She saw only two beautiful children who would fill their home with laughter, joy, and love. But Adam, consumed by the pressure of societal and familial expectations, couldn't see past his own vision of what his family should look like. Instead of celebrating the pregnancy with Sarah, Adam withdrew emotionally. The tipping point came one evening when Adam returned home late from his military duties. His uniform, a sharp reminder of his career, contrasted with the warmth of the home Sarah had worked so hard to create. The tension between them had been building for weeks, and Sarah could feel the strain. She had hoped, with time, Adam would come to accept the idea of raising daughters, but nothing had changed. She had noticed his growing frustration, his inability to connect with her or the pregnancy. Despite her best efforts to reassure him, Adam's distance only grew. That evening, Sarah was sitting on the couch, rubbing her growing belly, feeling the familiar movements of the twins inside her. The quietness of the house felt heavy as she thought about the future, about their children, and about the man she loved. She had hoped that their love would be enough to overcome this obstacle, but the situation was becoming more complicated by the day. When Adam walked through the door, his frustration was palpable. He slammed the door behind him, his face twisted in anger. "I can't do this, Sarah," he muttered, his voice barely audible. "Adam, please," Sarah said, trying to keep her voice steady. "We'll get through this." "We're going to be okay," Adam, consumed by his inner turmoil, exploded. "You don't understand," he yelled, his voice rising. "I don't want 2 girls. I want sons. I want a legacy. I want a future." Sarah's heart sank. She had never seen him like this. "Adam, please," she said softly, her voice trembling. "We are having children. 2 beautiful children. That's all that matters." But Adam, unable to reconcile his dreams with the reality of the situation, couldn't hear her. His frustration boiled over, and his temper, which had once been controlled by years of military training, now exploded uncontrollably. In that moment, Adam lost all sense of control. He lashed out physically, his emotions surging in a violent outburst that left Sarah stunned and defenseless. Investigation and aftermath. The sounds of the confrontation didn't go unnoticed by the neighbors. Sarah's screams, though muffled by the walls of the house, reached the ears of a couple living next door, who immediately called 911. The tension in the house was palpable, and the couple, once so full of promise, was now caught in an emotional and physical struggle that no one could have predicted. Within minutes, police arrived on the scene. The officers entered the home cautiously, unsure of what they would find. Adam, still in his military uniform, stood motionless in the living room. His face was void of any emotion, his eyes hollow and distant. He stared at Sarah, who lay unconscious on the floor, her body limp and unresponsive. The scene was chilling. What had once been a place of love and warmth now felt cold, as if the very soul of the home had been ripped out. When the officers handcuffed Adam, he showed little resistance. His mind seemed to be in a daze, unable to fully comprehend what had just transpired. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," he muttered, repeating the words over and over again, as if trying to make sense of the chaos he had just unleashed. "You're under arrest for the murder of Sarah Mills," one of the officers said firmly, his voice steady and professional. Adam's eyes filled with a mix of guilt and confusion. He hadn't planned for it to end this way. He hadn't meant to hurt Sarah. He had only wanted to regain control, to fix what he felt was broken in his life. But now he was standing in front of the very people who would determine his future, with nothing but regret and self-loathing in his heart. The investigation began immediately. The police had to piece together the events that led to Sarah's tragic death, and the evidence that emerged painted a clear picture of a man pushed to his breaking point. The officers discovered that Adam had been in frequent contact with his mother, who had placed immense pressure on him regarding the birth of his children. The phone records revealed multiple conversations between Adam and his mother, with her urging him to fix the situation. Her words, laced with judgment and criticism, were a constant reminder of Adam's perceived failure. The detectives also uncovered a series of text messages between Adam and his colleagues at the military base, further revealing his internal struggle. His military background, once a source of pride and discipline, now felt like a prison. Adam's thoughts became increasingly consumed by the idea of legacy, honor, and the desire for a male heir. He had long been conditioned to believe that only sons could carry on the family name and fulfill his role in the world. When the ultrasound revealed that Sarah was carrying twin girls, Adam's world fell apart. The sense of inadequacy that had taken root in him grew into a dangerous obsession. He couldn't reconcile his expectations with the reality of the situation. As the police pieced together the evidence, it became clear that Adam's actions were not the result of a sudden outburst. Rather, they were the culmination of months of emotional strain, societal pressure, and a growing obsession with fulfilling the role he believed was expected of him. Adam had been trapped in a cycle of self-doubt and frustration, and when Sarah failed to meet his expectations, he snapped. The trial that followed was heavily covered by the media, as it raised uncomfortable questions about the pressures placed on men in patriarchal societies. Adam's defense team tried to argue that he had been suffering from a mental breakdown due to extreme emotional distress. They claimed that the weight of his family's expectations, combined with the stress of his military career, had pushed him to the brink. They painted a picture of a man who had lost control, a man who had been unable to reconcile his personal desires with the reality of his situation. However, the prosecution countered by emphasizing Adam's premeditated actions. They argued that Adam's obsession with having a male heir had consumed him to the point where he felt that violence was the only way to regain control over his life. They pointed to the phone records, the messages, and the mounting pressure from his family, all of which had contributed to the tragic events that unfolded that night. The media coverage of the trial was intense, as it sparked debates about gender expectations, societal pressures, and the toxic nature of patriarchal values. Many were shocked by the extreme measures Adam had taken to fulfill what he believed was his duty as a man, and the public was divided on how to view him. Was he a victim of his upbringing and cultural conditioning, or was he simply a man who allowed his emotions and frustrations to spiral into violence? In the end, the jury found Adam guilty of second-degree murder. The judge sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The once proud military officer, who had dedicated his life to service and duty, now found himself facing the consequences of his actions. His career, which had once been a source of pride, had become a bitter reminder of the ideals that had led him down this dark path. The military, once his family and his calling, had abandoned him, and Adam was left to face the reality of the damage he had caused. The impact of Sarah's death rippled through the community and her family. Sarah's parents, devastated by the loss of their daughter, struggled to come to terms with what had happened. They had always supported their daughter's relationship with Adam, believing that he was the right man for her. They had raised Sarah to be strong and independent, never imagining that the man she had married would be the one to harm her. The grief they felt was compounded by the anger and confusion that followed. They could not understand how the man they had once welcomed into their family could do such a thing. Sarah's siblings, too, were left reeling. Her younger brother, who had always looked up to Adam, now struggled with the reality that his sister's life had been taken by the very person she had loved and trusted. The family's grief was overwhelming, and the loss of Sarah left a void that could never be filled. Her legacy, once filled with love, ambition, and promise, was now overshadowed by the tragic circumstances of her death. In the aftermath of Sarah's tragic death, Adam's actions seemed inexplicable to those who knew him. A man who had once been devoted to his wife, a man who had served his country with pride, had become a murderer, consumed by the need for male heirs. This case is a painful reminder of the destructive power of societal expectations and the dangers of placing too much value on the gender of a child. Adam's need for a son was not just a personal desire. It was an expectation driven by his upbringing, his culture, and the relentless pressure from his family. Gender disappointment, often dismissed as a minor issue, can have devastating consequences when it is allowed to fester. Adam's inability to come to terms with the birth of daughters, combined with societal and familial pressures, led him to commit an unspeakable crime. This tragedy serves as a reminder of how unchecked emotional turmoil can unravel lives in an instant. The lasting impact of Adam's actions will be felt by everyone involved: Sarah's family, the community, and even Adam, who now has to live with the consequences of his choices. This case serves as a cautionary tale, urging society to rethink the importance it places on gender and to create a world where all children are valued for who they are, not for the gender they are born with. What do you think about the pressures surrounding gender expectations? Have you witnessed or heard about similar situations in your community? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this story insightful, check out our other true crime stories about domestic violence and its devastating effects. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more heart-wrenching true crime stories and thought-provoking discussions on social issues.